What is up everyone, Barricade here, and bringing you guys another video talking about the Gears of War Ascendance novel. In the last video we talked about Marcus and Kate's perspective during Act 2, and now we're going to be talking about JD and Dal's perspective of the same time. So pretty much we're kind of rewinding the clock here back to when Marcus and Kate just left. So now we're seeing it from JD and Dal's perspective. So essentially after Marcus and Kate were noticed to be missing, Jin called JD and Dal to her office to discuss what had happened. And she was very, angry and distraught about what was going on, and kind of questioned JD and Dal about it. Like, did you know about this? Do you know where they went? Do you know if they went together? And at this point in time, JD and Dal didn't know about what was going on. So they kind of blew it off like, well, it's them. They found a way to get out. And Baird was there during this, discussion, and Jin kind of gave Baird a look like she had her suspicions about them leaving and that Baird might have helped them. JD offers to go after them to try to find them, but Jin immediately cuts him off and says, "Sit down, Lieutenant," and tells them that she has something else more important for them to do at this point in time, and that they will find, Jin and her robots and everyone will go looking for Marcus and Kate, and they'll get it taken care of. That she needs them to do something else much more important. Turns out that there was a locust burial site near Montevato, which is actually one of the cities that I talked about in one of the comic Gears of War lores that I made a while back. But anyways, there is a burial site near there, and no matter what, after the Human Locust War, they closed up these burial sites in big domes inside craters. And they basically stated that they would always transmit a signal giving the status of the burial site, of the dome itself, that it was okay, and everything like that. And for over 20 years, 25 years or so, it always gave that signal. And out of nowhere, it just went dark. They don't know what happened to it. They don't even know if the site's okay, if something came out of it. So she needs JD and Dal to go investigate it. Baird wants to help them, so he actually takes them along to one of the DB factories. And actually, when they get there, they walk through these big double doors and they find that Baird has a present for them. A new robot, similar to Jack, by the name of Dave. So they reprogram this robot and send them with them to help them out on their mission. So they essentially go in the Condor and fly to this burial cap, this burial site in a crater, to see why there's no signal. And when they get there, they can see that the burial site is okay. The crater is obviously there, the dome is there, everything is there that would keep the swarm, locust, burial site, whatever you want to call it, in place. As they're flying there, they meet their new pilot by the name of Yoon, a woman who is quite sarcastic and has a little bit of a funny personality. And she's personally a character that I liked as they showed her throughout this part of the story. Anyways, as they get to the crater, they notice something odd is going on. While everything is still the way it's supposed to be, they notice that once they kind of go into the crater and get to a lower altitude inside the crater, that all of a sudden all communications to Control just cuts off. No communication whatsoever, and they're really confused because everything else is working fine, but yet they have literally no signal once they get to a certain depth near the burial cap of the burial site. And so they decide to, let's just go ahead and investigate anyways, because they kind of thought about like maybe we should leave, come back or something, and they probably should have, as you'll see in a little bit here. But anyways, they decide to still investigate. They get out of the Condor, Yoon stays in the plane, and they go up to the burial cap. Just imagine a big building that looks like a dome with an entrance that would eventually go downward into the ground where the burial site is, where all the dead locusts are. And then right next to it is a big tower and another transmission building that has, kind of just think of it like a dome next to a square with an antenna, is how I imagine it at least. But anyways, as they go, they realize that the tower that was giving out the signal that was transmitting the status of the burial site, while still intact, they go to check the status of it, and all the signal seems really like gargled, like really just bad, like they can't really get any type of information on it. Signal is on, but completely garbled and makes zero sense. So they're kind of looking at it, and this was kind of the weird, kind of odd part here, is JD goes up to the tower, and Dal is investigating the signal, going through the little screens and everything on it, and he can't seem to figure it out. So JD kind of pulls the most basic thing ever and says maybe we should just turn the tower off and back on. It has a big power switch. So he grabs the power switch, pulls the switch down to turn the tower off, turns it back on, and it's not working still, but I don't know if it was because of what he just did or if it's just coincidence. As soon as he pulls the switch back up, the ground starts shaking really bad. Like horribly, like a locust e-hole or something of that nature. Out of nowhere, the main door on the burial cap breaks open and sends debris, metal, and everything flying everywhere. And when this happens, the thing that's unfortunate is a big chunk of the metal that flew off of the burial cap flies directly into the condor, landing right on the cockpit of the plane where Yoon was. And now the plane basically looks like it's gone at this point, and they see that out of the burial cap is a ridiculous amount of swarm just coming out, pouring out of it. Juvies, drones, scions, snatchers, pouncers, and even a swarmac comes out of the damn thing. So they're completely ambushed by a ridiculous amount of swarm. But the good news is with the explosion, it kicked up a lot of dust and it kind of hid them, so they're able to make a break for it without actually being found out. They make their way through the crater and they find themselves in one of these small buildings in the distance that surrounds the area. So they go inside and hide inside there, and they actually, one thing that's kind of interesting how they describe it is they found a piece of tape, essentially a roll of tape, and started taping all the blinds closed so they couldn't see, so the light wouldn't come out to give out their position. So now that they're hiding in here, they're looking for any way to get out, what they can possibly do to escape this, because they're completely surrounded. And one thing I really wanted to point out was kind of interesting is JD kind of started having a little bit of a paranoia moment, and he knew that the Swarmac was nearby, and he imagined the Swarmac pulling the roof off the building and just staring at them and killing them. But it was just something that he imagined. It was just kind of a little bit of a panic there. But regardless, he calms down, everything's okay, and they start making a plan. They look through the office to try to find anything that could possibly help them out. Dell finds an old Boltok taped under one of the desks, so he just takes it. It has a few rounds in it, and they're just looking through anything that they could possibly find that's useful. They find a map of the area that helps them out, and also a old computer that Dave can plug into and essentially interface with a lot of the technology in the area and see cameras and things of that nature. And while they're looking through all of that, they find that there's actually a few construction trucks in the area that Dave can interact with, turn on, and then eventually Dell could remotely control and drive back to where they are. And the plan is simply to use these trucks to plug up the opened burial cap. So what they do is they actually open the roof. Essentially there's an open hatch that lets them get to the roof of the building that they're in, and they haul Dave and put him really low to the ground and have him kind of skid across the ground as he eventually makes his way to the truck so he can turn them on so Dell can control them. But the thing that was kind of funny, as Dave is going through this area with millions of swarm nearby, one of the drones notices it. He actually looks directly at Dave, and instead of freaking out trying to kill him or anything, just looks at Dave and just leaves him. It's like, what the hell? That was kind of weird. I wonder why the drone, I must have just not realized is an enemy or something. It's kind of odd. But anyways, the robot makes its way all the way to the truck, interfaces with them, turns them on, and then Dell remotely controls them back to the area where they are. So what they do is, once they get the trucks back to where they are, they open the main door of the building that they're in, make their way into the trucks. JD gets in the first one in the front, and Dell goes in the one in the back. And while Dell is back there, inside of his truck, he actually finds, believe it or not, a breech shot, of all things, inside the truck. Crazy part is it still had the blade around the handle like it always does, but this one was modified to actually have a sniper scope on top of it. So he took it and was hoping it had a lot of rounds in it, but unfortunately it only had one. But he decided to take it anyways because it would at least make a good melee weapon and give him one bullet that he can use. So they make their way, they actually take the two trucks and they get out of them as they do this, of course, but JD essentially crashes his truck into the entrance first, and then Dell crashes his into JD's, kind of essentially shoving two trucks into the opening of the burial cap, kind of giving them more time and to stop the swarm from escaping. As they do this, though, they jump out, and this big explosion obviously gives away their position, and now all the swarm that are nearby are after them. And what they're trying to do at this point is they actually need to make their way up to the tower that JD turned on earlier, the one I mentioned where he turned it off and turned it back on. When he turned it back on, it did turn on the signal again, but they needed to get Dave to the highest point of the tower so he can transmit a signal and let everyone know that this is happening, that the swarm are escaping these burial sites and essentially about to start another war. The thing that was really interesting that they mentioned before all this, as they were first going about getting the trucks, is they were standing on the building and they were looking out, and they can see that all the swarm are kind of just spreading out in all directions, and there's so many of them. It's basically an army, and they're all spreading out in different directions as far as the eye can see. So they're going places, and they definitely want to take over the world. Essentially, they're pulling a locust, and there's that many of them that could definitely become that much of a threat. So JD and Dal are trying to use Dave to transmit the signal to let everyone know that this is happening, to kind of get everyone prepared for the upcoming battles. As they make their way up the tower through the staircase, they're just getting bombarded by bullets, and actually one of the scions is shooting buzzkills at them, and unfortunately one of the buzzkills hits Dave right in the side and makes him fall, and he's just completely dead weight at this point. They have to physically carry him because he's dead weight at this point, but they still want to keep him because, well, he still can be very useful. As they're making their way up to the tower, unfortunately the tower gets hit by a boom shot, and while the tower still remains intact, the staircase that they were trying to go up to completely collapses and they start falling, and they essentially have to jump off the staircase on top of the dome, and they roll down the side of it completely dazed, and Dal actually has to catch Dave as he's rolling down the side of the damn dome, and now essentially at this point they're on the ground, hurt, surrounded by swarm, and they have to make a break for it. And this is where JD and Dal's part of the novel ends for Act 2. So we're going to be talking about more about them, and of course continuing Marcus and Kate's story in Act 3. To be honest, I'm kind of thinking about making Act 3 kind of more together. I kind of like the idea of two different videos in a scenario, two scenarios like this, but I feel like it would be more better if I just make either one or two videos kind of keeping the story streamlined. So for the next few videos, I'm just going to kind of go back and forth between Marcus and Kate and JD and Dal. If you guys like this video, please definitely hit that like button and subscribe, and tell me what you guys think about the Gears of Ascendance novel. I know this video was a lot shorter than the last one, but it's simply because their part of the story was not as dominant as Marcus and Kate's. But yeah guys, if you guys like this video, also hit the notification bell so you guys can be notified every time I make a video. We're going to be continuing Act 3 and continuing to the end of the novel, so I'll definitely get these videos out before Gears 5 comes out. But anyways guys, thanks for watching, and take it easy. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see my most recent Gears of War video, hit that link on the left. If you want to see any of my other content, hit that link on the right. Thanks for watching guys.